Hey everyone, this is Mr. McLeod, and I'm going to help introduce this poem to you and then share some annotations with you as well. Now you might be wondering, what is an annotation? Well, annotations are just notes that readers make about what they are reading. You can think of it like having a conversation with the author, or in this case, the poet. And before I can ever start to annotate, it really helps me to have a clear purpose for why I'm reading. I want to know what it is exactly that I'm looking for and what type of things I should be annotating. So today, our purpose is pretty obvious. The main reason that we are reading this poem is so that we can eventually write our own poem that is similar in style and in content to this one. Therefore, as I'm reading, it's going to be helpful for me to annotate things that are going to help me write a poem. Now, a couple questions I could ask myself as I'm reading are, what types of things does the poet write about? And then what can I learn from this poem that might help me write a good poem in the future? So those are two questions that are going to guide my annotation, and those questions come directly from my purpose for reading. So with the first question in mind, let's get started. So the first question was, what types of things does the poet write about? Now, just so you know, I'm not going to be reading through the whole poem here. In fact, I'm only going to be looking at the first 5 lines. And then I'm going to let you guys kind of take some of my ideas and apply that to the rest of the poem. So to get started with annotation, I'm going to click on the top right here where it says, and then a drop-down menu comes up. I'm going to click on Smart Annotation Beta, and I got all these writing utensils, and I got colors to choose from. I'm going to choose blue just because, and then I'm going to start annotating. And the first thing I always look at is the title, and the title always gives us the main idea. All right. And so if I'm going to be writing a poem soon, I want to know what that poem is going to be about. And so this title clearly tells me. It says where I'm from. So this poem is about where the author comes from. But what you'll notice right away if you start reading is that this is not some sort of research paper. The poet is not simply telling us a bunch of facts about a place she grew up. Instead, the poem seems to be not so much about a place, but about specific memories that this poet has, and it's these memories that help define her and give her a unique identity. And that's similar to you guys. You might be from a whole bunch of different places, so it's not really a place that tells us where you're from, but it's a bunch of memories that make you special, that make you unique, and that give you an identity. And so that's what we're going to be looking at here, is what types of memories help show us who this person is and where she comes from. So let's go ahead and get started, and let's read the first line. So the first line says, I am from clothespins, Clorox, and carbon tetrachloride. Now, if you're like me, you might know what clothespins are, but you don't know what Clorox and carbon tetrachloride is. So I put a couple question marks there, and then I turn to my trusty friend Google to help me out. Now I'm going to show you a cool tip here with iPads. If I swipe up from the bottom with one finger, this taskbar comes up, and then I click on and hold down one of the buttons here, the Safari app, and I'm going to drag that to the right, and I'm going to let go, and voila, now I have Google here. And right away, you can see that Clorox, the first thing, is a cleaning product. If you read the very first item that comes up, we know that Clorox is for cleaning. Okay, so that helps me a little bit. So now I go to the next one, and I Google, carbon. Oh, and there it is right away, carbon tetrachloride. And if I read through this, look at this Wikipedia excerpt here. At the very bottom of it, it says that it was a precursor to refrigerants, and it was once used as a cleaning agent. And that helps me a lot. Now I'm going to get rid of this by swiping over. And right away now, I know that all of these things, just by doing a little bit of research, all of them have to do with cleaning agents, all right, or cleaning, right? Clothespins, you use those to hang up clean clothes, and Clorox and carbon tetrachloride you use to clean houses. So that's a pretty weird category, right? I don't expect you in your poem to write down cleaning objects. So what I want to show you is there's a whole bunch of different ways that you could actually categorize things. And as you read through the poem and you start to think about the different categories that you could put the details in, it's going to be important that you also start to make categories that would be helpful for you to write a poem. So like I said, I doubt you're going to write about cleaning agents, but that's just one of the ways we could categorize these details. Another way that we could categorize these things is that all of these things are objects that they probably come from this person's house, right? So we could say that these are household items. So maybe in your poem, you might not be writing about cleaning agents, but maybe you could talk about a couple of different objects that you remember being in your house. Another thing is that maybe all three of these things refer to the poet's parents' job. Maybe her mother or father was a house cleaner, and she would clean people's laundry and hang up the clothes with clothespins, and then she would clean their house using those chemicals. And then finally, a last way that I want to show you that you could categorize is by using imagery. Now, imagery is writing that appeals to our five senses. And we know that one of those senses is smell. And if you're like me, when you saw the picture of those bottles of Clorox, right away you began to remember the smell of bleach. And people have said that one of our strongest memories are oftentimes attached to smells. And so in this case, we could categorize part of these details by things that we remember how they smell from our childhood. So that could be something you have in your poem, is maybe part of your poem you're thinking about the different smells from your childhood. So as you can see, there's a whole bunch of different ways that you would choose to categorize this first line. Now the second line, I'll choose a different color. I'll go with red. And I'm going to read it. It says, "I'm from the dirt under the back porch," and then it describes it. "Black, glistening, it tasted like beets." And again, we have a couple different ways that we could categorize this. We have the first way is we could say, yeah, this is a place in her home. Maybe not right in her home, but certainly a part of her home was under the porch. And so maybe there's a special place from one of your childhood homes. Maybe, you know, some room or some closet or some comfortable chair that you remember. And then also, as she describes it, we see, again, imagery here. I'm going to kind of draw some lines over here for imagery. But we had smell, and now we also have sight, because she's describing the dirt under her porch, and we know exactly what that dirt looks like. It's black and glistening, and we even have now taste. Okay, so it tasted like beets. So again, it's given us a few different ways that we could categorize this second line of the poem. We could, in our own poem, write about a place in our home, or we could write about sights from our home, or even tastes from our past. You know, maybe it's your mother or grandmother's, you know, famous recipe that you can remember how that tastes, or maybe it was a certain food from your childhood. So anyway, what I wanted to show you here in the first few lines is that there are many different ways to categorize the details of this poem. And what you're going to need to do is you're going to talk about all these different categories with your classmates and with your teacher, and then you're going to ultimately choose a few of them that you're going to include in your own poem. And how you choose those is really going to be up to you. And so, like I said, you might end up writing in your poem about the different household items that you can remember being in your house. And then you might also make a category about some places in your home that were special to you. And maybe you even make a category just for taste, because you definitely remember some of the taste from your childhood. So that'll ultimately be up to you to decide which categories you want to include in your own poem. But step one is reading through this whole poem and recognizing the different categories that you might write about. Now, the next thing that I want to just show you was the second question that we had. The second question was, what can we learn from this poem that might help me write a good poem. And what I want to show you here is one of the most important lessons you could really learn in writing anything. And that's, it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. So it's not just that the poet in this case chose these three details, these household items or these cleaning agents, but what we realize is that by choosing these three things, the author is actually telling us a lot about herself. So not only do we know that these things are probably in her house when she was younger, or at least she remembers them somewhere, but I could also infer that if these three things have such a strong place in her memory that she would put them right at the beginning of her poem, then I'm going to infer that these three things appeared in her life more than a normal child's life. So why would they be in her life so much? And I'm going to guess that, again, one of her parents, maybe their job was to be a cleaner. Okay, so not only is she telling me now what's in her house, but she's also telling me potentially what job her parents had. And if that was in fact her parents' job, well, then I can make another inference, and I can guess that money was not abundant in her household. In America, if you're a house cleaner, you're not going to be very well off. And so that might also be why the other things that she remembers from her childhood, things like the dirt from under her porch, and if I go down a little bit, you know, the plants and the trees from her yard maybe, all of these things, you'll notice, these are not things that cost a lot of money, right? These are things that you can find outside that are free, and so that might be why she's including them, is because she grew up rather poor. And I got all that information from just these three details right here. And so that's what I want to encourage you guys to do as well. I want you to think about what items, what ideas, what taste or smells to include in your poem. And as you're thinking about it, I want you to try to choose things that tell us a lot about you. And so you're not just choosing, you know, some three random objects in your house to put in your poem, but you're going to be telling us, choosing some objects that might give us insight as to who you are and how you grew up and who your family is and what makes you who you are today. So those are the two things that we were looking at that I think are going to help us write our own poems. And again, that's what types of things did this poet write about, and we're going to try to choose some of those same categories. And then what can we learn from the poem that's going to help us, and hopefully this example shows that you need to be choosing details and words very carefully so that they can tell us as much about you as possible. All right, with those two ideas in your mind, I'm going to let you guys get started reading and annotating and discussing the poem with your classmates. And good luck. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with.